Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Slapshots, Sellies, and Storytime. It's Ivan Abelar, your host, sporting some new apparel that our group has received and shared with some of our Rebellion Hockey families. A lot of smiles when kids get some apparel, so it's like Christmas in April or May. All right, so today's episode. Today's is going to be a little bit different. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of the people we've introduced you to. Today's going to be a little different. I don't have a live guest, but I do have a guest that has some great stories. So many of you should know Brian Burke. He's been with a number of clubs, also with NHL, and most recently with Sportsnet before he took a job with the Penguins recently. So you'll hear some great stories, between the Nail Yakupov draft and at the time he was with Toronto, and what they thought of Nail and what happened in their interview before the draft, which is pretty crazy. A story about Kevin Bieksa when he was a rookie, and he had a little bit of a bout with a teammate after his first game. So that's an interesting story, and then also a story that Brian shares about Trent Klatt at the end. So some really good stuff. Also some information on why maybe they moved hitting out of Pee Wee and moved it up to Bantam. So he shares some thoughts about that with the boys on the Chicklets. So without further ado, take a listen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have lots and lots of good stuff coming up. We're in production for a few more episodes. We're gonna have a few former NHLers hop on the Rebellion limo bus and bring you some good information and advice. And then I have a few coaches that run summer camps in Edmonton that I really value their point of view, so I want to add them to our podcast. So tell me down below what you thought about some of Brian's thoughts. All right? See you on the other side.
And they came back and we had him rated number 1. So that was the draft that Yakupov went number 1, and I think Murray went number 2, and I forget who else.
Galchenyuk went 3.
Galchenyuk was 3, I think.
So you're like, oh my God,
he's dropping people. To us. Yeah, we were sitting there at the table thinking he's dropping to us. We're going to get a shot.
What a feeling that is, huh?
Yeah.
And then, all right, so when that's happening and the third pick doesn't take him, are you then thinking about calling the fourth if there's a chance that you think they may take him? We
were pretty wired in that.
Okay.
Once Yakupov went, we knew Murray was rated higher by most teams, and Galchenyuk was rated higher by most teams. We thought once Yakupov went, because he was the wild card, because we weren't going to take him. His draft interview was the worst interview I've ever had in my life.
Yakupov's was?
Terrible.
How come? Jeez.
Because he was defiant and obnoxious and sullen, and so I thought
them quick.
John Lilly, one of our scouts, you know those, I think, right?
Yep.
So John Lilly almost fought him in the interview. So it was not a good interview.
Oh, Jesus.
But the thing with Morgan Riley is I had a video guy cut every shift that he skated that year, which weren't that many because he only played, like I say, 15 games. I watched every shift he played twice on video. And I'm like, the scouts are right. This kid sees the ice. He skates great. He's a great kid. So
he's thick too.
Yeah,
big guy.
It was fortunate for us that went down that way.
I was actually.
Same thing with Cam Fowler when he got to Anaheim.
Yeah,
he dropped lower than he should have. I walked over to Bob Murray's table. I said, "You're going to get Fowler." And I couldn't believe he dropped that far.
I know, he could skate.
Well, I was going to ask you, as a general manager, you're hearing this from your scouts, and you said you added more to the fire. How many times did you get a chance to go see him live, or did you completely rely on their word for it and the video?
Just their word for it and the video.
Okay. I was digging for that.
That's also just having a real trust in your staff.
Yep.
It's funny the conversation led to interviews, and I was already thinking ahead to ask without. I am putting you on the spot. Any interviews really stick out to you? I guess you might have said Yakupov being the worst, but any other ones where guys are really surprised you in a good way?
Gabriel Landeskog.
Yeah, that's no surprise.
He finished his interview, and we wanted to ask him to sit down, help us talk to the other kids. I think he'll be a general manager in the league.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I really respect him.
The no accent is wild.
Throws you off like when you fly to Denver.
He's a robot. He's too perfect.
You're not from Edina, Minnesota?
But going way back, I remember when I worked for Pat Quinn, Brad May was probably the best interview we ever did, and he walked out, and we couldn't take him as high as our pick was much higher than he was slotted in. He was slotted in around 10 or 12, and I think we picked second or third this year, whatever. So we couldn't take him, but he walked out of the room, and Pat Quinn turned to me and said, "I got to get another first."
Wow.
Well, I was going to ask you, so we had Terry Ryan on, and he told a hilarious Mike Milbury grill story about his draft year. Do you GMs kind of chuckle about some of these stories together? Is it like I don't want to say a dick measuring contest, but do you guys play like a little game? Like,
I buried that kid today.
Hey, how about this interview?
Well, you know what I try and do, these kids, it's all scripted now. The agents tell them, who's your hero? My dad. Who's your...
So you're not often getting genuine, deep conversation?
No, so the guy comes in and I say, what kind of watch is that? So he's thinking, well, if I say it's a Timex, I'm cheap or we're poor. If I say it's a Rolex, I'm entitled. So now the kid's scrambling. I'm like, relax, I don't care what kind of watch. Or I say, what kind of dog do you have? He's like, well, I better say a Rottweiler, right? It's Brian Burke. And I can't tell him we have a Pekingese or whatever it is. And so the kid's all screwed up. And
right on his heels.
Now he's off the script.
Yeah, you need him to get away from one of those answers.
He's off the prepared answer. So I remember I interviewed Kasperitis, and he came in. He had the sunglasses pushed up, and he sits back and I remember barking at him, "Hey, pay attention here." And I remember when we interviewed Thomas Vanek, we had like the 6th pick in the draft or 8th pick in the draft, and he's like, "Why am I even here? There's no way I'll be there when you guys pick." So he was bored. He's sitting back, and finally I snapped at him. I said, "Hey, listen up, son. Straighten up and start answering the questions. If you know anything about me, I'll move up in the draft for a guy I like. And so far, I don't like you." And he paid more attention after that.
Sometimes
you're like,
I'll
wake move up just to draft you and bury you, you fuck. You think I won't fucking bury you?
Oh, shit.
That is unreal. So Vanek, all right. Well, he got a little pee-pee whack and he's back in
and you know what? I liked the rest of his interview. He's impressive. He's a good guy. But
yeah,
he just... The notion that why am I sitting here wasting a half hour with you guys when I'm going to be long gone on the draft board?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, sure. I was like, please pick me. Please.
I just remember being so nervous. And you do have some sort of script, and when they go off of it, it's panic time. But hey, Vanek, I don't know if you remember, Frozen 4, one of the most dominant performances ever when Minnesota beat UNH, I think.
That was very impressive.
Bergie, you just mentioned the guy I wanted to ask you about last time we never got to it, Pat Quinn. How essential was he to you as your first few days as a front office guy? Was he like a real mentor to you? You guys had a lot in common. Yeah,
I've been lucky. I've had 3. Well, my dad was, so I've had 4, but my dad was my mentor, and I idolized him. He passed away a few years ago, but I've been lucky. I played for Lou Lamoriello for 4 years, and you learn so much from a guy like that. Then I worked for Pat Quinn, then I worked for Gary Bettman. And all 3 of them, it was a major learning curve. Pat Quinn was one of the finest people that ever walked on this planet. And he was smart, and he was tough, and he was fair. Like when I was a young executive, I wanted to be Pat. I remember that's why I wore cufflinks. I remember I went in one day, and Pat says, what's with the shirts? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had the tie like this, and I had a black suit on, and I dressed like I did when I was a lawyer. And he says, what's with the shirts? I said, what's the matter with my shirt? He goes, real men wear cufflinks. So I went back to my office and called the tailor and ordered a bunch of French cuff shirts. That's all I wear now. I wanted to be Pat. Everyone loved him, and everyone respected him.
That is so cool.
What were some of the things he taught you about the game that you carried on forever as long as you worked?
His big thing was you had to be fair to the players. You had to be honest with them and fair with them. They had to see that they were being treated fairly. And he said, and we say we treat all the players the same. No, we don't. But the last guy on the team, and I was frequently the last guy on the team, right? I've got to see that I'm being treated fairly. Even though the stars are being treated differently, I got to feel I'm being treated fairly. And that was his big thing, was make it fair. We were very honest with players. Like when we send players down, here's why you're going down. And Pat taught me, he says, positive, negative, positive. So look, you've had a great camp. We love you. But now the negative, we're sending you to Milwaukee. Here's the things you need to work on. And if you do, I guarantee you'll be back. So the kid walks out with some hope. Everything Pat did was about being fair to the players.
Hey, we just interviewed Kevin Bieksa. I always say that incorrect. And everyone asked us to ask you about the time him and Fedorov had a little beef outside.
It's a true story.
What is the backstory?
So I drafted Kevin, and he played at Bowling Green, and he was a good college player, but he was a better pro, if you could imagine that. And we weren't sure we were going to sign him, so we had him come into Manitoba, to Winnipeg, where our farm team was, on an ATO, an amateur tryout agreement. And after the game, they went to Earl's, and Dallas Eakins was our captain. And Federer challenged him to a fight. Like Kevin, and we call Kevin Juice, right? His nickname's Juice, because he looks like he's on the juice, even though he's not. He threw a straw or something over his shoulder. It landed on the table, and Federer was sitting there with Kirill Koltsov, the other Russian player we had. And so he said, hey, sorry about that. And Federer says, we're taking this outside right now. So Juice turns to Dallas and says, you're the captain here. I'm here on an ATO. I can't get in a fight with a teammate. They'll send me home tomorrow. And Dallas said, go outside and fight him. So he went out in the parking lot, and he one-punched him, cut him wide open, knocked him cold.
Superman punch, Brian.
And so he comes back in, and he said to Dallas, and Dallas didn't even go outside to watch the fight. He just stayed on his bar stool and drank his wine. And he came back, and he said, they're going to send me home tomorrow. And Dallas said, you don't know our boss. They're going to sign you tomorrow. So I get up the next morning, and if there's a game misconduct or a suspension or something, I get a fax at the house, right? We used to have fax machines. I still do. My kids make fun of me. They want to know if I still have a pager, too. And so Steve Tambolini calls me, and I'm in the office at 6 a.m., and Tammy was at the game. And he goes, we had a problem last night. And I said, I looked at the game sheet before I went to bed. We didn't have a problem with the game. He said, we had a problem after the game. I said, oh, no, did someone get into it with the officials? Nope. Better than that. Someone get into it with a fan? Nope. Better than that. I said, did they get into it with the visiting team? Because you know how you go down the runway. Back in the day, you'd have fights in the runway. He said, nope. Better than that. I said, all right, I'm out of ideas. I said, no one hit a fan, right? He said, no. He said, Kevin Bieksa got in a fight with Fedorov in the parking lot at Earl's after the game. I said, what happened? So he told me. I said, all right, sign him. Sign him today. So we signed him the next day. That's a true story.
Imagine being told when you're a young kid, you're going to get a little amateur tryout in the minors, and you're going to knock out a teammate the first day you're there, and you're going to get signed.
Did you call him and tell him why?
He heard the story. But years later, we were playing them, I think, in the playoffs. I might have been with Calgary, and we were in the playoffs, and he saw me down the hall. He said, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, is that a true story? Is that why you signed me? I said, yeah, it's true. He said, I don't tell stories that aren't true. I said, that's a true story.
Did you not like Fedorov, or was it just because you liked his spirit of Bieksa?
Federer was drafted by Tampa Bay real high, like second or third round. And he was 6'4", 230, and much bigger than Sergei. And he was a great kid. Like we really liked him as a kid. So Scout said to me, this guy's either going to be a star or he's never going to play. So we're swinging for the fence here. We could be wasting a pick, but we want to try it. I said, okay. We had no problem with him as a kid. Coaches liked him. Everyone liked him. He just could not get it together as a player. So it wasn't his fault. No, he's a really nice kid. I remember one time he knew I was going to be here in Toronto when he was training up here, and he drove all the way downtown just to say hello to me for 5 minutes. I didn't ask him to.
Just don't blow.
So it was cool. More a sense of had all the tools. Just
all the tools, couldn't put it together, but no issue with him as a kid. He's a nice young man.
Well, speaking of fights, one that didn't happen, but I got to bring up the Kevin Lowe Bond stuff. I know this is legendary. You and Kevin Lowe had a little bit of a tiff. You basically offered him out to fight in a bond. What's that? Okay.
He challenged me to a fight.
Okay. Tell the story.
Kevin and I have been friends for a long time, and we're friends again. In fact, I'm going to go out and speak at they're doing some big charity thing in Edmonton in August, and I'm going to go out and speak at it. So Kevin was doing an interview. So they signed Dustin Penner to an offer sheet, and it really pissed me off because I knew the player wasn't worth the money. And I knew I had Corey Perry and Getzlaf coming, and now I got to pay them something north of there. So I was really sour at him. Plus, I was sour. We were both in Penticton. He didn't even call me and tell me, hey, we're putting in an offer sheet. The league called me. So I ripped him I said, I can't believe they're giving this player this much money, and didn't have the courtesy to call me. And I said, I got to wait the whole 7 days and let them see if we're going to match or not. But I think we knew right away we weren't going to match. We didn't have cap space. But anyway, he was doing an interview in Edmonton, and he said I was getting on his nerves. I was a real jerk about the whole thing. And I said, he said, Brian Burke, this and that. He said, anytime, anywhere. So I don't hear this, but people start calling me right away. So I'm in Newport Beach, and I went out in the backyard, and my wife was at the kitchen sink, and I thought she went upstairs. So I called Slats, and I said, that bastard just challenged me to a fight on a radio show. I said, I've never been challenged to a fight before and not taken the challenge. So he's fighting me. I said, now here's how you challenge a guy to a fight. I'm going to be at the Holiday Inn in Lake Placid on August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Have him get there. I'll rent a barn. I'll kick his ass. I'll drive him to the hospital, and we can get this behind us. So I get off the phone, and I don't know this, but my ex-wife says, have you lost your mind? I didn't think she heard any of it, right? And I said, I'm not letting him challenge me to a fight like that. So I don't know if she called Bettman or Slats called Bettman, but Gary called me about, I don't know, a half hour later. He said, you are not fighting Kevin Lowe. I'll suspend you both longer than your contracts if you do. So we never actually had the fight, and now we never will. Now I'll tell you a little postscript. A couple years after that, I was talking to someone on the phone, and Kevin's name came up, and I was like, that no good bastard. And Brendan, my late son, said, Dad, who you talked about Kevin Lowe? And I said, yeah. And he goes, didn't he used to be your friend? Didn't he go on your fishing trip one year? I said, yeah. He goes, well, why are you still carrying on this grudge? I said, Brendan, we're Irish. I expect you to carry on my grudges after I'm gone. And he said, well, I don't approve. So after his accident, Steve Tamlini called me, and I said, tell Kevin we got to mend that fence.
Man. I'm sorry, go ahead, Biz.
Oh, no, you go ahead, all right.
I saw a player survey recently that 85% of players basically ignore the so-called fancy stats analytics. I wanted to ask, where do you come down on these?
They're an important tool for us in evaluating players, but they're our third tool. So I gave this speech at MIT a few years ago. I said, okay, so you're a plumber. You go in and you see a leaky pipe. What do you grab? Well, these eggheads had no idea. I said, a wrench, God damn it. Don't you know what a wrench is? And I said, so for us evaluating players, analytics are the third tool we reach for. First is eyeballs. We watch them play. Second is our background checks. We spend a lot of time in the first 3 rounds trying to find out as much as we can about a kid, what makes are his parents successful, are his siblings successful? Do they stress discipline in their house? Little things like manners, like if you're raised right, you have good manners, and if you're not, you don't. That's a big thing to us in the interview. Does the kid have good manners? We try and talk to Bantam coaches, high school teachers, billet family. We try and make as deep a dive as we can on the character of the guy.
Big time.
Do you think they get overplayed in some circles, like people like overhype and like every time a trade happens, people evaluate the trade, or some people strictly on that stuff, and that doesn't seem like the way to do it.
It's these guys. What I admire most about these geeks is they've created an industry that can only hire them. Like think of the genius.
My only issue with that crowd is when they start questioning my eyeballs and my brain. When I'm like, bro, I got a lot more hours into this industry than you, so you can fucking shove those analytics up your hoop.
But I do admire them because they created an industry that can employ no one but their membership. That's brilliant.
Sure. But there's a lot of things that you can't measure with the tools.
No. You block a shot killing a penalty in the first period with your shin pads, and you dive in front of one to save a game and take 8 stitches in your lip, and it's the same thing on the chart. It's one block shot.
And there's a huge difference. So,
wasn't it your cousin or someone sent you a video of one of the best 12-year-olds in Pennsylvania?
Tim Conley, former 5th overall pick. Tim Conley coached the Syracuse Stars there at Quebec.
Syracuse, that's
Cole. Right. I wish I had the kid's name. We'll get it out there, but I saw videos of this kid. What are you, 12 in Quebec? He's pulling in snapshots and just going bar down from like top of the circles. 12 years old, looking like Austin Matthews. So they do things that you can't even really fathom. That it's because they're trying things constantly, and they're not being hit though. They're not being hit early enough. They don't hit till they're what, 11?
Well, no, but we USA Hockey changed that rule. They took hitting out until bantam.
So older than 11, right?
Yeah, 13 or 14. But I'll tell you why we did it. Because I was still involved with USA Hockey at the time and at the board level when I worked at the league. This goes back 15 years probably. We had a drop-off. Kids that played squirt, and then they went into Pee Wee and there was hitting. We had a drop-off of almost 50% of kids that quit playing. We had to do that. Take hitting out of Pee Wee. Now we have a drop-off at Bantam, but it's not as pronounced. And so that's why we had to keep kids in the game. And that's why there's no hitting anywhere in Canada or anywhere below bantam. Now, they teach hitting, they teach angling and how to take a hit and give a hit in your second year Pee Wee, but there's no hitting, no full body contact.
And I think that creates skill because kids are trying stuff and they're not getting run over.
And it's keeping close to half or 40% of the kids in the game that used to drop out. Yeah. So to me, I support that. And what's the last thing you need to learn to play hockey? Hitting. And you can tell
how to take a hit.
You can see two kids on a playground playing. You can tell which one's got a higher aggression level. Or you watch 5 kids playing on an outdoor rink when they're kids. You can pick out the kids who like contact. That's not something that's learned or taught. You either have some fight in you or you don't.
I completely agree.
There are very few players that develop. Blake Wheeler's a good example. Blake Wheeler was soft skill his draft year, soft skill at the University of Minnesota.
He does have a bit of chip on his shoulder now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Probably because he was told that's why Boston traded him and stuff.
But he plays with bite now, and we used him as an example at the scouting meetings. Don't think a leopard can't change his spots, but there aren't many leopards that change their spots. Usually a guy who's soft in junior is going to be soft in pro.
I would completely agree that he hit a level of where like he's got some snarkiness where if you give him a little slash, he's probably going to turn around and shimmy shake you.
Yeah.
And I like that. And he's a big and it probably helps now that there's not many guys around the league that are really his size, right?
Yeah.
He's like a bigger force now.
Take a hike.
Last quick one though. Who fleeced you for the biggest contract where you're like, fuck, damn, he got me?
Well, he's I love the guy, and he jokes about this that I built this new house. But John Michael Lyles, he brags about he's got one wing of his new house he calls the Berkey wing.
He's the best.
He came on. He's awesome, guy.
He's a beauty.
Oh, that's
the Berkey wing in TO, right?
Hey, I'm glad I asked that
Colorado
question.
or
Colorado.
Hey, pat me on the back. I'm glad I asked that question.
Hey, great job. Oh, actually, I apologize. This is my 4th time saying I have one last question, but somebody tweeted at us. What's the story? Did you ever give Trent Klatt that ride?
Yeah, well, Trent Klatt was a free agent, and he's playing with the Twins. And I said to him, Trent, this is a fantasy camp. You're playing with the Twins. You're going to get big points. They're only going to get better. Just stay here. And I think I offered him 3 years. And the agent said, I think we're going to get 4 years from L.A. I said, well, if he gets 4 years, I'll drive him to the airport. The bastard got 4 years. I did not drive him to the airport.
So he never got the ride. All right.